Planet Shore Professional Baseball League invites you to a summer of food, fun, and baseball. The week starts with Thirsty Thursday, where drink specials abound. Each and every Friday presents Fireworks Spectacular. Saturdays feature live band entertainment for that concert-like experience. Sunday fun days are for the kids with their favorite cartoon characters and superheroes. Every game, kids run the bases, meet their favorite players, and contest their skills in the wiffle ball field and speed pitch machine. So if you're looking for food, fun, and baseball, come on to downtown Utica and make Jimmy John's Field your summer destination.
How's the Detroit Sports Podcast going?
You guys keep up the good work, man. Podcasts are the way of the future.
Hey, everybody, this is Freddie Cohen of ESPN Radio. When I'm not talking about breaking news or breaking news on ESPN Radio, I'm always a fan and listen to the Detroit Sports Podcast, and so should you.
This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Welcome in, everybody. You're listening to Doc and Jock. I am the Doc, John McEnroe. Joining me, my cousin, Adam, the Jock Strozinski, host of a Detroit Lions pregame show this Sunday, 10 a.m., WDFN. You got some news regarding the show this Sunday?
Every Sunday throughout football season, baby. We got a name. We finally decided on a name. Nothing like cutting it close and wait to the last damn minute to come up with a name, but we've got a name. It's okay. It's cool.
What is it?
It's the WDFN Tailgate Show with Ryan and Adam.
Not bad. Every Sunday, season long, setting you up, setting the table, great guests, great insight, and I can't wait to hear it this Sunday, 10 a.m., every Sunday prior to Detroit Lions games. But this Sunday, there'll be no Detroit Lions actions as they take place as the Lions open the season this Monday versus the New York Jets. We'll talk about them in the second half of the podcast. But like everybody else, we got to react to Michigan, Michigan State. Panic has set all over Michigan regarding the way that these two teams played. And it's really interesting as the days have progressed in that the fans of Michigan, the fans of Michigan State are really, really honing in on the way that the team played, what they're expecting for the future. And it was just great to have college football back, to sit back and watch. Again, like everybody knows, it's a long game, a lot of commercials. But when you sat back and said, okay, what do I want to look for in terms of critical analysis of both Michigan and Michigan State, it was so fun just to start the year off watching Michigan State on Friday. Now, I know you have a lot of concerns regarding what you saw. I do as well. And then Saturday was just simply amazing. But before we get into all that, I do got a moral dilemma, and I texted you because I did feel guilty. And if you tune in this Friday, we're going to have a definite, specific recap of All In, the independent wrestling show, the largest independent wrestling show that ever went down. And it was on pay-per-view. WGN aired an hour, but like anybody else, you just kind of peruse the internet, and I happened to Google All In stream for free. And I happened to find it, and I watched the entire card for free, nothing out of my pocket, in high definition on my iPhone while I was watching the Michigan game. It was unbelievable. It was great. But I did text you. I said, 2% of me feels guilty in that these guys are working hard. They're hustling. They're trying to put together a show. They're doing their own independent thing. And you got idiots like me trying to steal it. And it was widely available. It wasn't like there was just one link. There were a lot. Should I felt guilty pirating All In a pay-per-view?
Probably. I mean,
no. More.
I mean, look, I'm not going to throw a stone here. I get it. You know, I wouldn't. How much was it? Like $50?
I don't even know. Obviously, I just went All In stream free, and then a lot of sites popped up.
I wouldn't have wanted to pay for it myself. So
exactly,
look, I was so invested in the Michigan game because going into that game, I really thought Michigan had a chance to win the game. At halftime, I probably should have just switched over and watched All In. It'd have been much better for my sanity.
It was an amazing wrestling show, cuz. Unbelievable action, the passion. Everybody wanted to see Cody Rhodes win, but I watched it for free, and I'm not going to lie, it's still available. You can go watch it anytime you want now.
You can ask Big Drew. When we have Big Drew on for the wrestling podcast, ask Big Drew. He'll tell you if you're out of line.
He'll probably say, of course you were, but he probably will be on the side DM. What was the link?
Right.
It's still available now.
Can you send that to me?
Can you send that to me?
On the low key?
You were in South Bend for the Michigan game.
I was.
And it was, by all accounts, by the pictures you sent me, a fun-ass time. It looked like you had a great time.
Dude, I had a blast. You know what? If you ever get a chance to go any place to check out a visiting stadium and a visiting college football game, go to Notre Dame. Do yourself a favor. The fans there are so nice. It's ridiculous. I thought for sure we were going to be harassed. I was a little bit nervous about possibly getting into a fight. My wife was with me. She was wearing her Michigan gear. I didn't want anybody to say anything stupid or out of line to her, and then I was going to have to defend her honor. You know, I was like, man, God, I hope none of this happens. And it didn't. And it didn't. We had a blast. The people who took us around, showed us around, were absolutely incredible, super inviting. We basically went and we bounced around from one tailgate to another tailgate to another tailgate. We didn't like set up shop. It was incredible. Every tailgate that we went to, because we were just visiting different people, they all had something different going on. It was a different vibe.
Good foods, good drinks.
Good foods, great drinks. Everybody was incredible. They were all welcoming. They didn't care that you were wearing maize and blue and you weren't wearing anything supporting the Irish. They just welcomed you in with open arms. It was totally cool, man. It was unfreaking believable. It was so crazy that me and my cousin looked at each other because we invited the people who showed us around. We said, look, when Notre Dame comes to Michigan, you can stay with us. We'll put you up. We'll show you around. We'll take you on a good time. It got to the end of the night where we looked at each other and we're like, how are we going to top this? Like, they were so cool and they showed us everything and they showed us such a great time. How, when they come to visit us, do we make this better? Like, I don't know if we can. Not sure how we're going to make that happen. We've got almost maybe I think we got a year to figure it out. I think Notre Dame's coming next year. I have to look at the schedule. But we've got some time. We've got to get it figured out here. And I don't know how we're going to do it, man. It was totally crazy and totally awesome. And their stadium is beautiful, dude.
Now, we're going to definitely break down the game, but I want to ask you this because a lot of people are kind of critiquing the media and the way that the Michigan team was portrayed in the preseason. Do you feel, just as a consumer of media, that the Michigan Wolverines were accurately depicted in the preseason in terms of their strengths, their weaknesses? Because when you really look at it objectively, I mean, you and I obviously talked about it. I've tweeted out several times that I felt like the biggest weakness for the Michigan Wolverines was not the talent, was Jim Harbaugh. So, I feel like we were fair and objective. We looked at the strengths, the weaknesses. We both had them around 9-3. But when you look at the way the fans have reacted, I think part of the reason why everybody's so angry is that they felt like this Michigan team, based on the way that they were portrayed, was something more than what was actually there. But I say to myself, look, I mean, if you just watch football and you watch the last 3 years, Jim Harbaugh had some issues coaching in terms of some of the decisions, obviously starting with trouble with the snap, some decisions in the last year's state game in terms of passing the football, some play calls, the way the team looked, the way the team performed based on the talent that it had. Everybody kind of felt like this team underperformed, and that is directly as a result of the head coach. But then you go into this year and you got Shea Patterson, but there were still questions about the offensive line that we looked at. There were still questions regarding the fact that, hey, just because Shea Patterson rolled up to Ann Arbor on campus doesn't mean that he's going to show up there and play. And that's just based on the fact that I follow the Spartans and no quarterback just shows up and is God on campus. But I feel like a lot of people messaged us and said, hey, there was a lot of hype, and now fans, based on Michigan's opening game loss, are really upset based on how Michigan was portrayed. Was it accurate, or do you feel like, now, year 3 in one game, everything is on the table, he's now open, Jim Harbaugh is open to criticism?
I think it depends on what you did with your listening, with your listening ears. You fans probably heard what they wanted to hear. When we were discussing this, you and I brought up all those things. And I think the biggest issues coming out of the Notre Dame game were Jim Harbaugh and his coaching and the offensive line. And both of those reared their ugly head time and time and time again in that game. So you could listen to, hey, Shea Patterson's going to be a really good quarterback. He's going to fit with what Harbaugh wants to do. This defense is going to be awesome. And then you could block out the rest. Or you could sit there and listen that, hey, this defense is going to be really good, but the offensive line for Michigan has a bunch of question marks. And can Jim Harbaugh make it happen in the big game when everything's on the line?
And the complete lack of respect for Winbush was really amazing. And that also, too, you lost your best wide receiver, Tariq Black. It was like, oh, no big deal. I was like, wow.
But it wasn't just Michigan fans disrespecting Winbush. Driving around Notre Dame.
They don't like him, huh?
They didn't believe in this guy. It wasn't just Michigan. Notre Dame fans were like, yeah, this guy, who knows? They all want the backup. They want the other quarterback in there because Wimbush has question marks. This is the same guy who I think he led them to a 9-2 record last year, maybe a 10-2 record, and then he struggled in the bowl game. The same guy. He looks incredible right now. Like, just doubt him a little bit and watch what he does. Now, he looked incredible the first half, I should say, because the second half the defense got its act together and kind of shut him down. I think he was like 2 for 7 passing. He didn't do a whole lot the second half, but that first half, he was lighting Michigan on fire, lighting them on fire. They finally figured it out, but you had spotted Notre Dame so many points, and that offensive line was absolutely brutal. And again, this is another game where Michigan plays 2/3 of a game, right, really well. It's the 1/3 that totally lets them down. So defense is really good. Special teams gets you a touchdown, but offense is absolutely brutal. You don't score an offensive touchdown until super late in the game, and then when you kind of go into your hurry-up offense, you can't put it together. You're taking way too much time. I mean, Notre Dame was only rushing 4 guys. They were sending 4 guys in, and Shea Patterson was just getting annihilated, absolutely crushed. That shouldn't happen. It really shouldn't. Not unless all these guys who are the 4 who are crushing Shea Patterson are going to the NFL. It's the only time it should happen. I don't think all those guys are going to the NFL. I just don't believe it. And I put a lot of this on not just the offensive line, but more of it on Jim Harbaugh. And the reason I say it's Jim Harbaugh's fault is you know what you have as far as a quarterback. I know what you have as far as a quarterback. If you follow Dan Orlovsky on Twitter, Dan Orlovsky knows what you have as a quarterback. This is a guy who is better and excels in the run-pass option. He's a guy who excels when he's on the move and throwing the ball. He's a guy where if you roll the pocket and you get him out in space, he's much more lethal and much more dangerous because he's very athletic. Instead, Harbaugh wants to have him do 3-step drops, 7-step drops, hang out in the shotgun, and you're basically cementing him into your offense. You're not building your offense around him, and that's the issue I had with this, because if you know that your offensive line isn't very good, or even if you go into the game and you think, hey, my offensive line's pretty good.
And then you saw what happened on the field.
Exactly. You see what happens the first quarter. You're like, hey, maybe we've got to change something. Roll the freaking pocket. Roll it out. There was a play where Patterson rolls to the right. He rolls to the right sideline. Gentry stays in, blocks, and then releases. And he releases, and he goes, it's just a curl pattern, but he goes out about 5 to 7 yards and then just bends it off towards the sideline. Patterson's in motion, rolling out. You got Gentry breaking to the sideline. He hits him right in the numbers on the run. They're both running, like Patterson's running at Gentry, hits him right in the numbers. Guy catches the ball, you get a first down, and you move the chains.
But don't you fear that the offensive line will tire out? Because I looked at that analysis and said, if you can't basically cover 3-step drops, how are you going to cover rollouts? Because that's full-on press. You got to make sure that the gap is protected. You got to make sure these athletic linebackers, and then you got to avoid holding. I feel like it's not that easy to just call a rollout. Now, that's what I obviously tweeted and said, yeah, they should roll it out. And I said maybe 2 out of every 5 plays. But it looked like, from what everybody was talking about, it looked like that Notre Dame knew what was coming. Mm-hmm. It looked like Notre Dame had the game plan set, and they were able to adjust and react very fast to Michigan's offense. And I think that speaks to Jim Harbaugh and his lack of creativity and the lack, I think you're right, of utilizing Shea Patterson's strength properly. Not in that they should have rolled him out, but they should have probably thrown the ball a little bit deeper. They should have extended the field a lot more. It just seemed like, okay, we're going to run the ball to Karan Higdon, 2nd and 7. We're going to run the ball again to Karan Higdon, 3rd and 4, and then see what happens. It didn't seem like it was all that innovative to run that offense that way, and it speaks to the level of the game plan and why people are critical of Jim Harbaugh is that the talent's there. You got Rashawn Gary, you got Karan Higdon, you got Chris Evans, who only gets a couple carries for less than 2 yards total offense running the ball. And then you go and you look at the entire picture, you go, that team with maybe a different coach maybe walks out of South Bend with the victory. And that's why everybody's squarely blaming Jim Harbaugh in that offensive game plan, saying, wait a minute, this is way too vanilla. When you had a play, in the second half, you opened it up to Nico Collins, you marched right down the field. And it looked like it was something that could have been taken advantage of way more. And that's why people are very upset, is that Michigan offense is way too conservative.
Do you think Harbaugh and the coaching staff don't have any faith in the wide receivers since Tariq Black went down? I mean, you brought it up right there. Nico Collins goes down the field, stretches the field, and they hit him for, what was it, like a 52-yard gain? I mean, you needed to do more of that, and you didn't do enough of it. So Do they not trust Donovan Peoples-Jones? He came in highly recruited, highly touted. He was supposed to be a guy who was supposed to be a game changer on the outside, and Tariq Black goes down, and it's like all of a sudden you forget about your wide receivers.
Because it's a systemic issue. I mean, I think everybody that heard this and now is going to hear it again from us is going to be shocked. 1 full calendar year has taken place. A lot of games have passed. A lot of minutes have passed where Michigan has not thrown a pass from a quarterback to a wide receiver for a touchdown. 1 full calendar year. The last one was the game versus Cincinnati. 1 full year. That is kind of, when I heard that, I'm like, no, come on, that's not true. I went back and I saw it and I'm like, wait a minute. Are you serious right now? Michigan has not thrown a pass from a quarterback to a wide receiver for a touchdown in the end zone in a calendar year. That's absurd.
That's ridiculous.
And that speaks to the offense again. It's like, what are you trying to do here? Are you trying to ground and pound it? But it's not working. Teams can just load up and pressure your offensive line. And I think that was, if you say the first, emphasis of blame goes on Jim Harbaugh, the next is, and Jim Harbaugh is responsible for it. Why, at this point in time in year 3, does your offensive line not look like it's progressing? Are you looking at talent and going, well, we want these kind of guys, but then when they get into your system, they don't fit? It doesn't make any sense. The offensive line, and look, we're not going to be taking personal attacks like some Michigan alum feel the need to do, but we will be critical of a couple players and say, look, Cesar Ruiz and John Runyon have to do a better job. Otherwise, Shea Patterson's going to be on his ass the whole year.
Yeah.
That offensive line has to do better versus big-time competition, and it's just fearful now, and Michigan fans should be scared to death in that there's film. Bum rush, blitz accordingly, and you can get to the Michigan quarterback and you can disrupt a lot of their offense. It's really scary that at this point in time, fine, you don't have a quarterback, you're pinching guys, you're trying to get Shea Patterson, fine. At this point in time, to not have an offensive line that looks collectively like a unit is scary. It's real freaking scary.
Do you find it weird that Jim Harbaugh isn't going to make any alterations to his offensive line?
I almost fell on my chair when I heard that.
I'm so surprised.
What boxes did he check?
I would be putting up every single job on the offensive line, and I'd be making them earn it this week. Like, you would have to show me something in practice this week for me to start you.
I was
if
shocked.
You started last week.
He went out there and talked to the press, and that's why more people are criticizing.
And he acts like nothing's wrong.
He said
he acts like everything's okay. It's not okay, dude. It's really not.
We checked a lot of boxes. What boxes were someone should
being
ask?
Bad, being awful, looking like you can't run an offense, looking like your offensive line is a bunch of freaking turnstiles. Yeah, bro, you checked all those boxes. Are you honestly, what are you watching? Because you're not watching the same game I'm watching. You're not watching the same game Braylon Edwards is watching. And he goes on this rant where he calls Cesar Ruiz weak and Shea Patterson scared. If I'm Shea Patterson, I'm scared too. I'm having flashbacks of David Carr nightmares here. I would be terrified. All right. He does go a little bit far to drop the F-bomb when he's referring to Michigan and calling them trash. But this is a take I had when I hosted DFN's show on Monday. They are trash. If you want to get upset by it, go ahead. Be as upset as you want about it. But he's right. They are trash. He was wrong calling out individual players, and he was wrong with the way he attacked Michigan, the program.
And maybe tweeting with the F word.
Yes, especially as an analyst. That's what I was referring to. Especially as an analyst and being somebody in the media. He was wrong there. But his actual analysis is not wrong.
Spot on.
Michigan is trash. Michigan is irrelevant right now. They don't matter. I don't care that you pull 5-star recruits. I don't care how many of those guys you bring. If you can't make them any good, get the hell out of here with that noise. You don't compete in your own division, in your own conference, and you're not going to see the college football playoff. Get out of here. If you don't make it to Indianapolis, I don't want to hear from you. And right now, he hasn't made it to Indianapolis, and he's not even close. It's a third place, fourth place finish. This year, are you going to end up in 5th? What are we talking about here?
As I was listening to DFN on Monday and reading throughout this week, another thought popped in my mind, okay? Michigan is on a path now, year 3, year 4 of Jim Harbaugh trying to build a program. You're not moving forward, so you're kind of in this stagnant zone of maybe being an 8 to 10 win team. The gap is even widening further between them and Ohio State and Alabama. Alabama has 2 quarterbacks that can do the job, and they're questioning Nick Saban about who's in and who's out, and he's getting all angry. They got 2 guys that could run circles around anybody that you have in your program. So I would
Urban Meyer obviously doesn't even have to be there to coach the damn team. They're going to hang 77 on you.
Exactly. And so that's why I think Michigan fans are freaking out, is that the gap between the elite teams and where you are is making them irrelevant. Now, everyone's going to follow Michigan. Everyone wants to see what they're doing. But when we say, are they irrelevant, what that means is, I think it's time to take them away from being serious contenders to win the national title any year until you get to Indy. That's the only talk that should be is, hey, win your division, get to Indy. Stop with the national title talk because you're not in that class. You're not in that conversation at all. And the gap is widening. So if you're a Michigan fan, I see the anger. I see why Steve Deace and the Michigan podcast have these awesome GIFs about how everything sucks and everything is not where it needs to be. And Steve has said it. And Michigan fans that think this way are absolutely right. If Michigan's not on the path to win the national title based on what you have, then you're going nowhere. Then you're spinning your wheels. You're in the mud. You're stuck. And you are irrelevant in terms of anybody that thinks that Michigan's going to win the national title still is crazy. There's no factual basis to believe that.
What's the point of going out and getting 5-star kids? What's the point of sleeping over at some kid's house so you can bring him in as the next talent if you can't develop and you can't nurture that? Your job as the head coach is to sit there and take this kid who by all accounts is a 5-star or a 4-star, and you're supposed to get more out of them. You're not getting anything out of them, and that is where the criticism comes from. And I think that's where a lot of the frustration with Michigan fans come from, because you see what they have on the field. You see the roster on paper, and you're like, man, this is going to be a good team. It's going to be a real good team. We got 4 and 5 stars everywhere. Look at that offensive lineman. He's huge. The guy can block anything. And then you see the game, you see what takes place, and it just doesn't translate. So your expectations and what you're expecting because of what you're seeing on paper, on top of that, what national pundits are telling you, if I got to hear Colin Cowherd talk more out of his ass, I swear to God, I might punch the radio, because this guy just makes things up as he goes along. I was sitting at the radio station the other day, because that's that awful show that is on before my show actually goes on, and I was listening to this clown talk about, oh, well, I can see Michigan sitting there rattling off the next 5 wins. Yeah, because they don't play anybody, bro.
Right.
Like, get that shit out of here. What are you talking? When they head into Wisconsin to take them on, they're going to be 5-1. If I was an idiot and I didn't pay any attention to what was going on with Michigan, I'd be like, wow, that's a pretty strong statement by Cowherd. And then you look at their freaking schedule. They're playing Western Michigan, Sisters of the Poor. They're playing Rutgers, Maryland. Get the hell out of here, dude. You're playing nobody for your next 5 games. So then when you do take on Wisconsin, you better be 5-1, and you better come out with a freaking W. Get the hell out of here.
Exactly. Everybody's fired up. Nobody's happy with what's going on. Everybody's thinking, okay, now the season has taken a turn for the worse, because nobody thinks that they're going to run the table and win it all. Come on now. If there's an injury to the offensive line, if Shea Patterson has cramps going forward, that's a big issue. And you look at it and you go, okay.
Are they period cramps?
No Midol needed.
It was hot.
Just has to hydrate a lot better and get back in the game.
Get that boy a Gatorade.
I'd never in a million years would have thought that we would have heard the word Shea Patterson cramps and having him getting in and out of the game.
Did you see when the sniper took him out? His head was on a rollout,
yeah.
And then all of a sudden there was a sniper somewhere high up. Just took him out, shot him in the back of the leg, and he went down. He made the pass, though. Yeah. It was a completion. It was nice to see.
Now, cuz a lot of our supporters really enjoyed the conversation we had with Dennis Fithian from The Ticket. And what did he say? Look, if Michigan lost and would have played a decent game, we can then look at it and say, okay, no problems. But the way that they played, the mistakes coming out and getting down 14-0, having a guy ejected for targeting, Chase Winovich, a leader on the team, extends a drive with a penalty late. It's not acceptable to play like that. Whereas you come out of the second half and you don't perform as well. Now, offensively, you did get a little bit better. You did clamp down on defense, but because it's a 60-minute game, the way that Michigan played did not make anybody happy, because there were too many mistakes, and everybody, Mike Tirico was befuddled in that you're playing for your life late in the game. Fine. If you want to erase everything I just said up until that point, you're driving the ball late, with the combination of McCaffrey and Shea Patterson in and out of the game. You're driving the ball late. Clock is ticking, and they're like, la, 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 let's just take, as much time as we want, no pressure. What are you doing? Everybody in this, that was a Michigan supporter was messaging us and blowing up our phones going, what's going on? Hurry up. Mike Tirico even said it, like, these guys are not utilizing the clock at all. They're taking their sweet ass time with this. Definitely, again, points back to coaching. Why aren't they hurrying it up? Why aren't they trying to get down the field? Why aren't they trying to do some things? And it just made it really like it shocked everybody to have that laissez-faire attitude late in the game. It was shocking. It really was.
Yeah, it's again
crazy, right?
It's similar to them coming out at the half and getting called for a delay of game. It's all coaching. Your coach has to be in your ear telling you, hurry up, let's go. You can't, you
can't snap the ball with 8 seconds left on the play clock. You're crazy.
This all falls on Jim Harbaugh. The offensive line was bad, but you know what? He needs to be better at evaluating his talent and then correcting the issues going forward. You can't have your team, when you're down late in the game, just kind of walking up to the line. No, everybody needs to be running. You need to know what's going on. You need to be dialed in. Your 2-minute drill, you should have a set number of plays that you know you're going to go to when you walk up to the line, and you've got to be able to audible out of those. But you need to know, like, hey, look, we need to run this play, need to run this play, need to run this play, and then you can check out of those into other plays if the defense throws you for something that's a little bit of a loop. But what he did and what that team did on Saturday was absolutely abysmal. They played horrible all over the place. And those defensive penalties, those really hurt the team because each one of those big ones led to a touchdown. And those touchdowns are what got you behind early, and you weren't ever able to climb your way back into the game.
And looking ahead for the remainder of the 2018 football season, what percentage confidence do you have that Michigan can win the Big Ten and actually get to Indy? What's your level of confidence now for the future? Do they rebound? Do they did what Shea Patterson show you on film, did it allow you to say, okay, he can get better, the offensive line can get better, the defense can clamp down, the level of opponents will get a little bit easier before you play the big dogs? Is there still hope left in the Jock regarding the future of the 2018 season going forward?
That's a good question. It's a real good question. Because I don't want to overreact to one game, and I feel like I'm overreacting to one game, and I've been trying to keep myself at a spot where I'm not just flying off the handle, right? Like, I tried to stay as composed as I could on Monday, and I started to kind of get to that point where I was getting really, really angry, and then Ryan cut in and it calmed me back down because I was building. But, man, I really don't want to overreact, but...
No, here's the reaction you should have. Michigan looked like shit, and it was a performance that did not impress anybody. And going forward, you think, and it's probably much safe to assume they're going to look like shit one or two more times, especially versus the big dogs, Wisconsin, Penn State, Ohio State. The losses could rack up.
Throw MSU in there. MSU's a big dog.
The losses could rack up.
Yeah, to make it to the Big Ten championship, I'm going to say 5%. I still hold out hope, but it's slim. It's slim.
Yeah, in a year when that was expected.
Yeah, I mean, look, I said it last year. Going into this season, I expected them to be competing for the Big Ten championship and going to Indianapolis, and then when we just did our predictions last week, I said 10-2. At this point, Dennis's 8-4 looks more realistic. There's just too many question marks, and you have a head coach who's way too hard-headed to sit there and get what's going on and to make the necessary changes. Look, they're going to come out. They're probably going to smoke Western. Big freaking deal. It's a MAC team. Who the hell really cares? Do you know what I'm saying? What do you do when you play Wisconsin? Will you be 5-1 when you go to see Wisconsin? I sure as hell hope so.
You better be.
And you better perform when you play Wisconsin, and it better look a whole lot better than that pile of awful gravy you gave me on Saturday.
So let's harken back to last week's podcast. We're talking about Michigan State. We're talking about opening games and what does Michigan State show? And you kind of looked over and said to me, you think it's going to be a close game? And I said, of course I think it's going to be a close game. Michigan State doesn't just, open up and show their hand early on in the season. And you said, oh, no, I think they're going to handle Utah State handily. They're going to
they'd win by at least 2 touchdowns.
And I said, relax. No, they don't do that. This is Michigan State, a team that, like I've said before, I watch a lot and I watch closely. And so, of course, I wasn't surprised at all. 0% shocked that they were losing in the fourth quarter. But, again, you got Lewerke, you got Felton Davis, you got LJ Scott, you got an emerging running back, and they were able to come back. Now, you had asked the question, how concerned are you? Hell yeah, I'm concerned. That wasn't a great performance. Your offensive line didn't do a great job. LJ Scott was like, running, all those carries for not that many yards. People are like, oh, you know what? The backup Hayward looks like a guy that can do the job. Felton Davis, the wide receiver, feels like could have done more.
He's a stud, though.
The Lewerke made too many mistakes, and you saw that contest. Look, it's great that they got the win. And I'm very happy they're 1-0. I definitely take the stance, like Mark D'Antonio says, is, hey, it's better to make mistakes and learn from things you put on tape and win. Definitely. But going forward, the reason why everybody's looking so critically at Michigan State is going, whoa, no Big Ten team in several years has gone out to Arizona State and defeated them. And you're going to go out there and play 10:45, which local time, and it'll be 7:45 out there in the West. And you say, can Michigan State go out there and play a high-flying game? Granted now, Arizona State's defense is not highly touted. You can probably score a bunch of points, but Michigan State's defense versus Utah State was very concerning in that, whoa, Utah State was able to do something. So I was very concerned. I walked away from that contest going, whoa, that was a game in which you were lucky to win. And you walked away from that game going, whoa, there's a lot of areas that you got to improve in terms of what you do in the red zone. I mean, my God, how many times are they going to call running plays early on in drives at the red zone? Be a little bit creative, mix it up a little bit, try and get the ball in the end zone. How many times are you going to get bailed out by opposing defenses? It's just not going to happen. And I saw that contest and I said to myself, okay, they got the victory. I'm okay with that. But I'm thankful that when we've evaluated Mark D'Antonio, you generally have confidence the team is going to improve. They may not walk away from Arizona State with the victory. I may have misspoken and said maybe they would lose to Central. The early loss probably could come to Arizona State, but I kind of discounted Herman Edwards and what he could do early on with that team. They scored a bunch of points. They played a fun game. But the biggest concern I had was the mistakes by the offense, the turnovers, and definitely not being able to contain Utah State on defense. That was eye-opening, going, whoa, wait a minute here. They're scoring sometimes at will. You weren't prepared for that fast-paced offense? Let's go. Get in gear.
Yeah, I think the thing that I took away from the Michigan State game was how much they were pushed around in the trenches.
Yeah.
The offensive and defensive line were just bullied by much smaller players. And that really shocked me and really took me back. And I was like, geez, what is going on here? When you see Lewerke trying to just avoid and elude guys in the backfield, what the hell is this? You know what I'm saying? Like, you're not expecting this from Michigan State.
Why?
Again, Michigan State's offensive line and defensive line are usually pretty solid, and not so much in the game against Utah State. And you've seen what Utah State was able to do with their quarterback. They were able to pick apart that Michigan State secondary, and they were able to get a lot of yards and move the ball almost at will, like you were saying. So now you bring in a guy like N'Keal Harry. N'Keal Harry's an absolute savage. The guy's an absolute beast. Their receivers caught a lot of passes for some yards. N'Keal Harry is a different breed than what you faced when you played Utah State. So how does that translate now going forward to this Saturday? I think Michigan State's going to struggle a little bit here. And I think there's a lot to be concerned about. I think we'll learn more about Michigan State after this game, because you're hoping to see the offensive and defensive lines kind of straighten up a little bit and tighten up, and they don't get bullied around as much. But I took a lot out of that game, and I was like, wow, these guys are getting pushed around by those guys? And that was my big head scratcher coming away from that game. And it was great that Michigan State won. It was really good that Michigan State won. And it took everything they had, though. It took a lot. And you're right, Lewerke made a few too many mistakes. LJ Scott thankfully held on to the football. The plus coming out of this is it looks like you have a secondary back who is emerging, who looks like he can be a game changer in Connor Hayward. And he looks like a guy who's going to be able to help you out a ton going forward, especially to help spell LJ Scott. LJ Scott carried the ball 23 times. That's a lot. That's a lot for a college running back. So Connor Hayward stepping in, I think, going to be able to give him a little blow here and there and kind of take up some of that slack. I think it's a really good thing. I think Lewerke will settle down and he'll be much better come game 2, game 3, and moving forward in the season. But the secondary and the defensive line, as well as that offensive line, are where I have a ton of question marks that I still need to see more on.
When he addressed the media, some of the things that D'Antonio said in his weekly presser was the team's 15.5-minute edge in terms of time of possession, converting 11 of 17 third down attempts and 10 explosive offensive plays. He also said the defense gave up only 4 big plays despite giving up 344 yards, all but 25 of which came through the air. But like everybody else, he was definitely very critical of the way that offensive line protected Lewerke. You can't do that. Brian Lewerke is the centerpiece of that offense. If he goes down, the season's over. You got to do a much better job of protecting Lewerke. It looked like he was sacked 3 times, all before halftime, and the Spartans only ran for 36 yards on 19 first-half rushing attempts. That's not going to get it done, good, especially with that offense predicated on establishing the run early in games in the trenches. So that did not look good at all. And you have to do a much better job versus a Herman Edwards-led team because they're going to be flying high. They're going to be running all over the place at home. You know it.
So which team do you think this is going to be? Because Michigan State, like you said, starts slow almost every single year. And it's really hard to gauge what team you're going to get. Are you going to get that 3-9 team? Are you going to get that 10-2 team? Because you just don't know out of the gate because they always start this way.
I'm still thinking it's a 3-loss team. I mean, remember, I think the point that a lot of people definitely hit on is the fact that, hey, a lot of people are back. But remember, not a lot of seniors, not a lot of fully developed young athletes. Remember, these are guys that have experience. They've played before, but at the same time, there's no better experience than having more years under your belt. So, look, I'm definitely like everybody else looking to next year for Michigan State to peak. This year, I just want to see performances that are worthy of Michigan State, meaning play well in the trenches, protect the quarterback, run the football, limit turnovers. If they go 9-3, it'll be a good year. I think that the hope is that a lot of these guys with the new young talent that's coming in will peak next year. That's the year to target. This year, with Brian Lewerke, continue to evolve, continue to play well versus your rivals. There is a strong chance to get to 10 wins, 10-2, but I still think 9-3 is what they're going to be. When you look at Michigan State, again, what do we say? Offensive play calling, really basic stuff when you get to the red zone. You should have punched in at least 3-4 more times versus Utah State. It just seemed like you got to the red zone and then you were like freaking out trying to figure out a play that would work. And whereas at this point in time with Brian Lewerke, you would think that, okay, let's utilize a tight end. Let's utilize his athleticism. Let's roll him out a little bit. It just seemed like it was way out of whack. And you're going to see that versus better teams. You're going to see teams that maybe will figure out a way to pressure the offensive line, will figure out a way to capitalize on Michigan State's mistakes. But 9-3 is where I still think that team will finish.
I think this team is closer to the 10-2 team instead of the 3-9 team.
You see a better ceiling for them when they actually get better.
Yeah. I think because this is why. Mark D'Antonio loves games like what took place on Friday. All right? And the reason why he loves it is because it's a teaching moment. You didn't lose. So you don't get hurt because you didn't lose. You won the game. But you've got stuff on film now that you can now take back and be like, look, guys, this is bad. This is bad. That was good. We need to do more of this. We need to correct that. So it's a great teaching tool for D'Antonio, and I think he gets the most out of games like this.
You want to know why it's great to be a Michigan State supporter as opposed to some people who support Michigan? Michigan State has an identity. You know what they are. Smash mouth defense. They're going to try and run the ball down your throat and establish the trenches. Now, the big issue that we all have as fans is like, can you execute it? Can you actually go out there and play that way and win in this landscape of the NCAA where it's much more wide open? You got teams running spreads and doing things like that, spreading you out and running a myriad of plays. Now, I can disagree philosophically with how Michigan State plays. I want them to be run and gun, a lot more exciting than turning around and handing it off every first down, second down, I formations. But that's been the MO of Michigan State the last decade. What's the identity of Michigan? What do they call themselves? What are they offensively? What is Michigan? What is Michigan football these days? Is it a bunch of hype and no delivery? What is Michigan football? At least with State, we know what they are. The issue is, can they go and execute it to the degree, and should that be the system they run? I think a lot of State fans would say, look, you got Brian Lewerke, throw the ball deeper. Let's see what happens. Utilize Felton Davis, utilize White, utilize these guys that are young, and see what happens. Fling it all over the place. Win by 14 games. It's okay. You're allowed to do that. But, I respect D'Antonio for saying, this is what I bring to the table. This is the old school way of winning, and we've done it in the past that way. When we got to the Big Ten championship versus Iowa, we had that drive, handoff to a freshman, L.J. Scott, and let it rip. Bam, 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 and we powered down the field in one of the epic drives that we all remember. So I can respect D'Antonio for saying it. I can definitely disagree with it, but I know Michigan State, what their identity is. It's clear, and they just go out there and try and execute it. What is Michigan? What's their identity? Do they have one?
No.
They don't have one.
They don't.
I think that's what pisses people off. What is Michigan?
They have way too complex of a playbook. That's why you've seen Shea Patterson in like 9 different offensive sets. It's too complex. Harbaugh is trying to run something that he wants ran instead of tailoring it to his quarterback. This is the big issue I have too. If you look at what Ohio State did a few years ago, JT Barrett went down, got hurt. Cardell Jones comes in, right? And they end up winning a national championship with their backup quarterback playing. The offense didn't change. Parts of it, of the playbook, opened up because Jones did things different than JT Barrett did, but the playbook didn't change. It was still read option, and it was still fake the run, and then with Jones, he would just drop back and pass.
Why doesn't Michigan have an offensive coordinator?
Dude, don't even get me started on that. Because we'll go for another 45 minutes on it.
Because
don't get me started.
I think a lot of people who said Jim Harbaugh would do a much better job by delegating responsibilities, by maybe cutting 1 or 2 staff members, getting an offensive coordinator that can focus solely on the offense and continue with Don Brown on the defense. You sit back and ride the wave of success.
There's no reason for a head coach to be the offensive coordinator. That's why that position exists.
Yeah.
Let them do that. You have more to worry about than what's going on in just the offense. You've got the entire team to worry about. But with Ohio State, the playbook never changed. It just pages opened up for it. You know what I'm saying? Things where you were able to execute different plays differently, but it didn't change. If you look at Michigan's quarterback room, you got a guy like Patterson who is really good in the read option. He's a guy who is better on the move. He's a guy who throws better when he's in motion. You got a guy like McCaffrey who is a pretty athletic guy, will probably be more of a pro-style quarterback. You got a guy like Milton who's got a huge arm, and then you got Brandon Peters. You got guys who are all over the board. Like, none of them are the same. They're all different, which is fine if you have offenses tailored to what they're going to do when they play. That puts a lot of pressure on your offensive line, and your offensive line already isn't good. When he goes to look for a quarterback, I'm not sure who he's looking for or what he's looking for. I don't know what fits the type of offense he wants to run because he doesn't know what type of offense he wants to run, and that's an issue.
Going forward, it's going to be a huge couple of weeks. You have to see improvement in a lot of areas with Michigan football, and I do think that the fans are really, right now, they're on board with those that are being critical. They want more. They desire more. They demand more. It seems like their eyes have been opened to the fact that, okay, Michigan does have warts. They have weaknesses. There are things regarding that program that can be better, and it's a good place to be at. Your eyes are open. You're not as fanatical as you have been, and that's a good thing because going forward, people need to hold Jim Harbaugh accountable. He's got to do a better job. He's paid at the level of a guy like Nick Saban. He's being compared to Nick Saban, but like I said earlier, the gap is widening between other programs that are elite. You're not being elite, you're being substandard, and that's unfortunate for Michigan fans who have always thought that they were elite, but they're not elite. They're not. They're substandard.
It's funny because he's closer to Brady Hoke than he is Nick Saban.
Yep.
At 40 games in, Brady Hoke has one more loss than Jim Harbaugh, and he did a much better job against the rivals.
Yeah, and I think people are now noticing, too, that, wait a minute, when Harbaugh's, that game versus Ohio State might have taken some of his soul in terms of what he does on the field. That doesn't look like the same passionate Jim Harbaugh that we've seen in years past. It kind of looked like a guy that's been subdued and not the same guy. And I don't know if the losses are piling up. 99 in the last 18 games, not winning big games versus your rivals, 0-17 on the road versus ranked teams. Those are not good numbers. Those are not things you want to see.
Ton of pressure.
It might be a ton of pressure, man. And pretty soon, really interesting when we look back at the archives, Greg Henson sat across from me where you're sitting right now, and we were joking around, and he was like, oh, Michigan's on its way back and things like that. But he was a guy that said, what if it fails? What will happen then? And we both looked at each other and were like, yeah, what if it fails? Do you just blow it all up? Do you go with someone totally outside the system, outside the box? Do you go and get a Michigan guy? Do you get a Les Miles finally in there to take the job? Do you get somebody tied to the Michigan program? Those kind of questions, as this season progresses, will be asked. We will talk about it. If this is not the guy, if this guy says, look, I got to jump ship and goes back to the NFL, maybe takes the Cleveland job if it opens up. If Jim Harbaugh's not the guy, if it's a complete wash and a disaster, then what? I feel like, where do you go after you've hired the guy that you declared the savior, a Michigan man with Michigan mottos? If it doesn't work, something to be nervous about as we go to the first break here. All right, second half of the podcast, we're going to talk about the Lions. Massive, massive week, massive season for the Detroit Lions. We'll talk about the 53-man roster, the moves that were made, and some of the moves that weren't. You're listening to Doc and Jock on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Doc and Jock here for our host site, Podomatic.com. When Adam and I first started this project back in September of 2013, we were looking for a great place to host all of our recorded audio, and thank goodness we found Podomatic. And all I did was Google easy way to upload a podcast because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to record with my cousin, have a good time, debate Michigan State, talk about the Lions, talk about all the pro teams, and then quickly take that fine audio and put it to a great host site. So we've been podcasting now for 5 years, well over 1,000 podcasts, great guests, Adam, Vito, Steve, they're all doing great things, parlaying their success into other ventures. Why? Because of the fact that when you push that button, great audio came out. Never has it happened where you push the button and the audio was distorted or it didn't play. That would be catastrophic. We would not have been able to earn credentials. Adam would not be so prominent at WDFN if he didn't have the network support here behind him. And that's because we used a great host site. So if you're looking to start a brand new podcast, and I see a bunch of them starting every single day, and it's great to see, definitely check out and utilize Podomatic.com. All right, guys, before we get to the Lions, it's kind of fun with the podcast. I kind of noticed that it's really great, is that we ease into it. We're like, okay, let's try to be professional. Let's try to sound like we know what we're doing. And then we just rip the scab off and we're like, Michigan shit, what the hell are they doing? And look, I'm going to tell you something. We are unique because
we are professional.
We are professional. And, Vito and I talked about Braylon Edwards and the tweet and things like that because we debated it. And I was the one to ask and say, was it really fair for Big Ten Network to suspend him? And it got a lot of interaction, a lot of discussion. But my point is that, you got to really be the owner. And the reason why this is fun is that we own the outlet. So we can go back and forth. We can say these things. And I listen to a lot of other podcasts and I listen to the radio. A lot of people, go, oh, Michigan played like S. The best part about doing this is our willingness to just call it like it is and to be able to express our passion where we can say Michigan played like shit. They played like absolute dog shit. And I love the fact that we can just freely say it. And we're probably one of the only ones that are willing to say it. And I'm going to put that clip on where I said Michigan played like S and they played like shit. And we don't have to censor ourselves. And
we don't shy away from our take.
We don't have to shy away from it. And I love that about our platform. Others may not be willing to do it, but I'm so glad that we own the outlet that, and it's funny as an inside joke, is that you handled yourself better at Notre Dame than a professional did working for a major network, which was really funny. I told Vito, I'm like, it's crazy how this played out in that, I counseled Adam on some things and it actually worked in his favor. And a professional did not follow that and got some severe ramifications for it.
After the Michigan State game, the trouble with the snap game, I told myself, I was like, I'm not going to let John get to me. I'm not going to let him troll me.
That was it. That was it.
Yeah, because that was embarrassing for me.
That was the height of what you... Yeah. But you are allowed a pass because literally I've never been so excited because I was in a pro-Michigan house. And when that happened, I spun like a top. I was like, what? I was just me. It was a party of one, a full-on celebration. It was. I just wish everybody would have that chance to be such an underdog and to be losing the entire game, not to play well and to have a mistake happen. It was great, but I'm so happy to be part of this network, to do it the way we've done it, in that we don't have to kowtow to anybody. We can speak our mind. Nobody's telling us. Nobody's going and saying that Detroit Sports Podcast, they're shilling for the pro teams. We got credentials. We got access, and we're not shilling for anybody. We call it like it is, and that's the one thing I think you can count on from us going forward, is that we just call it like we see it, and we're objective. Now, obviously, the best part is Adam sees it from the Michigan side, and I view it from the state side. But I think that actually helps us in that we can take a critical look at the other program as well as the programs that we support. And I think that's why we've been a podcast that's been getting great guests and getting, having the ability to do what we do. And it's just great. I just love it. I love peeling it back and letting it rip and talking sports with you, man. I'm really excited. Even talk to Lions, even though I will say this. It's great in that when you have the platform on our Twitter page, you at Adam R. STROZ, me at Detroit Podcast, people are commenting on other people's posts through us. Mm-hmm. Like, I put out a question, what do you think the Lions record is going to be? You got a couple people going 4-12, 5-11, and you got other fans going, that's so ridiculous. What are you talking about? I'm going to screen grab this and call you out. And they're having inner debates through us. And it just is so fun to be in the mix where we can ask the question, what does Michigan mean to you? Get 100 responses. What is your expectation for the Lions? Massive response. On Sunday, I'll tell you this, we got a lot of views on our Twitter page, a lot. And in years past, the one marker I'll tell you is that we used to lose followers after Michigan games. This year, we gained followers. So that means people are finding us. They're accepting us. They feel like we're fair and balanced. I must have tweeted over 80 passive-aggressive tweets on Saturday. 80. And we got great response. Support. People supported me. Nobody called me out. Nobody said, hey, you're this. They just went along and said, yeah, we don't agree with what's going on. And especially now, talking about the Detroit Lions, based on the preseason, people did take stock in what they did, and they've downgraded their expectations. The majority of the responses we got well over 100 responses, 7-9, 6-10. People are not happy with what they saw.
Yeah, I'm right there. Going into the preseason, I was the guy who was like, they could probably go 9-7, maybe 8-8. After what I seen during the preseason, and again, trying to stay balanced and trying fair. To not even so much fair, but just trying to stay balanced because it's preseason. I don't want to go flying off the cuff because they lose a preseason game or they look bad in a preseason. It's preseason.
Because I'm going to tell you this, though. I remember when Steve Mariucci showed up, okay? One of the years I remember, me and my brother-in-law, we don't go to a lot of sporting events together, but I'm like, hey, let's go to the Monday night game. It was specific, and it's seared in my brain, in my memory, okay? Go look back to the preseason game, Monday Night Football, Detroit Lions versus St. Louis Rams, I believe. It was an abysmal performance. Everything did not go right. False start penalties, absolute domination. They didn't play well, and it caused a lot of people to open their eyes. And it might have been that same season where Steve Mariucci was dismissed, or it might have been a really bad year. But look back at some of the preseasons in the past. It has affected the Lions. It has gone on into the regular season. Because remember, I want to say this to those that are listening. When we talk about the Lions, it's not the same as the rest of the NFL. The Lions are a subset and an outlier to themselves. So you can't just say, 10 years ago they went 4-0 and lost 0-16. The Lions do things other organizations don't do. The Lions have done things on the field that other organizations would never do. So when we take a critical look at the preseason, it's because this Detroit Lions organization has no track record of success. We're not being haters. We are sitting here trying to go to ceremonies to break curses. Why? Because it just seems like moves that are made that should make sense don't, or moves that don't take place end up hurting you. So when everybody compares, well, other teams, and we do it too, but when we look at what's going on, I will say this. I think that now you're seeing a philosophy that's trying to be put in place where it's not going to be player focused. You're not going to go get a Khalil Mack for $25 million. You're going to put all your money in your quarterback, and you're going to try to fill out the roster, and you're going to put a system in place. That's what's happening. Will it work? That's the debate. That's what we're seeing. We're going to talk about whether we thought Khalil Mack should have been on this team or not, and it'll be an interesting debate. But I will say this. If you evaluate the Lions based on what you saw in the preseason, more power to you. You should. Don't dismiss the preseason because of the fact that the Lions have no basis of respect to say, no, just ignore it. They'll turn it around. What basis gives you that? There is no basis for anybody to say that the Detroit Lions are going to turn on any switch. You got to look at right now, I'm fairly confident that the Lions are going to win Monday versus the Jets. Mm-hmm. Fairly.
I agree.
But I would not be shocked if a young quarterback, Darnold, comes in and lights us up. You know, other quarterbacks have done it. Matt Ryan came in at home, played a great game. His, I think, first pass in the NFL was a massive touchdown. So don't act like the Lions are this hot shit organization that's just going to show up and perform and do things. No, evaluate the fact that, wait a minute, the biggest concern that not only we're talking about, but everybody else is, there was no pressure on the quarterback, and it looks like that's going to be the primary issue going forward is what's going to happen with that defensive line. Are they going to be able to execute?
Yeah, and that's kind of the one thing that has me most hopeful for this season is that what I seen in the preseason isn't going to be what we get in the regular season because Matt Patricia did no scheming, right? He was just putting guys out there, setting them basically on their own island, wanting to see them win those one-on-one matchups, and they happen to lose a lot of them. And I think the reason why he did that is because now he knows what he has to work with. You know, he knows what they're strong in, he knows what they're weak in. So now he can scheme to try to hide some of those weaknesses, kind of similar to what we're talking about with Jim Harbaugh in the way the offense runs, right? You're going to play to your strengths, and you're going to try to minimize your weaknesses. So hopefully, that's my hope going in to this season, is that on the defensive side of the ball, that's what he does. Offensively, I've got some concerns because you expected this offense to look much more efficient than what we got during the preseason, much more of a cohesive unit, and that offensive line still isn't playing together. And TJ Lang, hopefully he's healthy. I mean, he's gone through pretty much all of preseason on the shelf here because he's dealing with an injury. That doesn't look good when you're heading into your very first game on Monday Night Football.
Any surprises on how the 53-man roster shook out? Because
hell yeah.
I would have said, you know what? I would not have been surprised, or I would have been okay if they would have cut Castle and Rudock. Because of the fact that I think you can upgrade that position. They both didn't play well.
I'm glad you brought that up. Let me ask you this, all right?
There's no rule that says you had to keep them both.
No. I was surprised that Castle was kept over Rudock initially. Castle makes more money. I think Rudock's played much better in the preseason. They're both there just to hold the clipboard.
But that game versus Cleveland wasn't that good, though.
Right. But would you go out and sign a guy like Connor Cook? Ooh. Connor Cook was cut by the Raiders. Connor Cook has played in a playoff game. Connor Cook does have experience. Do you think Connor Cook right now is a better quarterback than both Jake Rudock and Matt Castle? Because I believe he is.
probably could be developed, but the sign is this, is that a quarterback guy, John Gruden, looks at things and goes, why would he cut a guy that had potential? Maybe he didn't fit in the system. Maybe, there were some things with his personality or what they found out, because he played pretty well.
Why would you cut Khalil Mack, or why would you trade Khalil Mack? Because John Gruden's a maniac. That's why.
That's probably it.
So, I mean, I'm look, anything John Gruden does, I'm taking with a grain of salt right now, because until he goes out there and he gets the Raiders to the playoffs with this roster, I don't want to hear anything from John Gruden or John Gruden supporters.
No, see, I'm different. I thought a different name was going to come out of your mouth. I said, you know what? If you really want to be forward-thinking, if you really want to put yourself on the map, go out and sign Colin Kaepernick. Go out and bring a guy that, I
would love that.
Yeah, a guy that maybe see what you have left in him. Maybe it could be very affordable. A guy that could also mentor Matthew Stafford in terms of experience of what it's like to play in the Super Bowl, to win a playoff game. And if the question is this, is that the likelihood of Stafford going down is maybe 30%, getting nicked up here and there. He's shown that he can play an NFL season now for the better part of a decade. His first couple of years obviously were injury-plagued, but now he's shown that, okay, he's muscled up, he can play, he's durable. But if he goes down, I'm not
if
satisfied.
He goes down, the season's
Castle?
over.
No.
The season's over.
I would say, you know what? Go out there and take a look at, take a flyer on Colin Kaepernick, and it would also send the message that, hey, you know what? Let's see what he's got. Maybe he's not the best 32 quarterbacks, but maybe he's the top 64. Let him see what he could do as a backup. And if he does, if Stafford does go down, you at least got a guy that can zing the football around, maybe, can be a guy, should the offensive line crumble, just get you a couple extra yards in some plays.
He's a guy who's won playoff games, unlike anything we have going on right now.
Wouldn't be terrible, but,
So, look, I would be so in favor of that. I honestly, I think it would be great.
But I think you and I are in consensus that Castle's not a backup.
No, he's horrible.
It's horrible, right?
He's absolutely awful. He looked abysmal. He looked absolutely wretched this preseason.
Yeah.
So, no, I would love that, actually. I think that'd be great.
What's the makeup of the roster that you like? Anybody that was signed that you said, okay, they're still going out there pinching guys from
I was going to ask you, does it seem like only guys that
Bland
they bring in
are from Patriots?
Are from the New England Patriot organization?
And then the Patriots are doing the same thing. They're like,
so weird.
It's like Jace Billingsley's now in the practice squad with the Patriots. That was weird, right?
Yeah. So strange.
Yeah.
A couple things that caught my eye. One, A'Shawn Robinson demoted to second string.
He hasn't played well in the preseason.
No.
It's really odd, huh?
I think we need to start looking at Bob Quinn's drafting much more closely, because
year 3 might save him because there's some talented individuals, but years 1 and 2 allowed me to say, look, these guys that you want to covet as first rounders for Khalil Mack, I want the proven player. These guys, you look at it and you go, ooh, oh my God, these guys are terrible. Jared Davis is a first round pick. Ugh. They definitely could do a much better job. What's bothered you about his draft so far?
So a guy like Jeremiah Ledbetter, let go. They cut him. Jared Davis right now is a big sticking point for me because he hasn't developed. He's not developing the way you thought he was going to develop. He was supposed to basically be your Chris Spielman, and it doesn't look like that's him at all. I mean, he is a 2-down back who may be trending towards bust right now. I just named 2 picks right off the top of my head that aren't doing well or have been cut from this team. Tracy Walker, again, 3rd-round pick. I don't know why they wasted that pick on him when you needed help along the defensive line. Again, question marks all over the place, right? And this is going to play into the Khalil Mack discussion that we're going to have, because I just named a 1st-round pick. I named a 6th-round pick. Mind you, his first 6th-round pick was a long snapper who didn't make the team. Tracy Walker's your 3rd-round pick. These are all guys that you could have given up to get Khalil Mack, a Pro Bowl player in not one position but 2 positions, and a guy who's probably going to be a Hall of Famer.
Here's a sticking point to the supporters, okay? And we got a ton of response on that as well regarding Khalil Mack. They were okay pretty much with the package that was set up because the Raiders threw in a 2nd-round pick for the Bears.
It
really
softens
odd.
it a little bit.
Softens a little bit. The part that was a sticking point for a lot of the supporters was the salary going forward. $23 million plus for Khalil Mack, a guy at that position that's getting paid like a quarterback. And most in the league, as a copycat league, don't pay defensive ends that much, more than the line of what Ziggy's making this year.
True. But Ziggy's gone after this year. There's no way Ziggy comes back, right?
Right, but then they say that you can't sign more players in the future. You might have to let go of guys.
Salary cap expands every single year.
Yeah.
Every year the salary cap moves up because there's more money coming in from TV revenue.
So you're saying, hey, I would have done that deal with the Bears. What the Bears did, I would have gave them all that money that fast.
If if you look at this offense, you look at this defensive line, you look at what you got going on with who you've got as your edge rushers, it's basically Ziggy Ansah, right? You go out there and you mean to tell me you can add Khalil Mack to this defense? It becomes dramatically better. And I think
Ansah gets better. Everything's better.
Your secondary gets better. Your linebackers get better. The entire defense gets better because you add one guy. And I know it's going to cost you a lot of money and it costs you a lot of draft picks. I get it. But you know what instantly catapult yourself up into that upper echelon in the NFC North. Right now, the NFC North is sick, dude. You got Aaron Rodgers with Green Bay and Jimmy Graham out there.
Minnesota's sick.
Minnesota's disgusting, dude.
Ugh.
I mean, I've got on my fantasy team, I've got like half their roster.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Good God, they need to go off every week for me. Otherwise, I'm losing a lot. And then you've got the Bears who...
Hey, that's unbelievable!
That's right. You got the Bears who have pushed all in. They pushed all in. They've gone out. They traded up to get their quarterback. And I don't know what Mitch Trubisky's going to be, but they've gone all in with him. They've brought in some wide receivers to help out. They've got 2 running backs there who I think are going to be very good. Very good. Jordan Howard's going to be very good, and I think Tariq Cohen by the end of the year is going to be the number 1 back there, especially in that new offense that they're going to run. On top of all that, you now add a guy like Khalil Mack to a pretty good defense, just makes it that much better.
It's really interesting to talk about fan support and things like that. For me, a lot, and looking at the fans, I can kind of see that right now, their level of hype and support comes from just having Stafford. They're like, okay, we got our quarterback, I'm happy. And they can be content, they can sit on their hands and cheer and clap, yay, we got Matthew Stafford, he can do the things. For me, that's not the case. So tying back to Michigan, a lot of the reason why they're so angry is that they were so hyped up, that this 2018 Michigan team was so hyped up. For me, I need a little bit of hype for the Lions. I need a little bit of that because I'm not getting it from Stafford. I'm not getting it from that defense. I'm definitely not getting it from what I saw in the preseason. So you add a Khalil Mack. Now, of course, my objective brain would still be like, okay, with Khalil Mack and what the Raiders did with him, you still probably could see a situation in which they just, it's pretty easy to scheme away from him. You just go away from him and handle your business. But what would have happened was if they would have signed Khalil Mack, the level of hype and excitement and hope probably would have elevated with a lot of people saying, look, this is a team that can get to the postseason. This is a team that can do some things. I would have definitely bought into it and said, look, a team, the Detroit Lions that has Khalil Mack might be in a much better spot to handle their business. And so I kind of wanted to believe in the fact that we could get a superstar, but it isn't going to happen. And I don't think that this Lions team is going to go out and do some of that. What you might see is a guy later in his career that's troubled, maybe come in here, maybe in 2 or 3 years if Le'Veon Bell sticks with the Steelers and he's now, still somewhat productive, you might see that because you always saw the Patriots take chances on troubled guys. You might see that. But in terms of going out and getting a superstar free agent in his prime, the Lions aren't there. They're not Super Bowl worthy yet. They're still in year 1 of a rebuild.
But you mean to tell me that if you were to add Khalil Mack to this defense,
I go apeshit.
Right. But
I will go, wow.
It doesn't automatically make them better. On top of it, it's not like he's a locker room cancer.
Why didn't they do it?
He's a really good guy.
Why do you think they didn't do it?
Because they value their draft picks. They value being good and having good players instead of having great players. That's what it is.
Backwards.
You can right. You can sit there and you can go out there and you can get average to good players. You get like 5 or 6 of them. It's going to. You could have 2 great players. You know what I'm saying? It's just the way that this team's going to be put together. Look at what New England does. Right.
Yep.
New England's got a great player.
Now I want to ask you this. We're pretty confident they're going to win game 1, right?
Yeah.
I don't think that they're going to lose to the Jets.
I don't think so either.
I think the Jets are going to keep it vanilla for Darnold. They're going to want him to just kind of control the game. And I think if the Lions, all they got to do is really easy goal. Get out to a 10-point lead in the first quarter, you're probably going to ride it out. You can then pressure, dial it back, and I think that will be so needed. What's needed right now for the state of the Lions is just 1 week. 1 week at a time. That's what we always commit to do. Obviously, we'll talk about our expectations. And me, similar to everybody else, I'm going 7-9, 8-8. I think there's going to be ups and downs. I do think that in the second half of the year, we will see a Matt Patricia defense that somewhat looks professional. But early on, it's going to be a struggle. It's going to be confusing. Bend, don't break. A lot of yards are going to be shown. It's going to look skewed. I'm prepared for that. I won't be mad. It'll be funny. I don't want to see them getting torched. I don't want to see Nevin Lawson looking like a clown out there. I want to see the defense look respectable, but there's going to be some issues because it's an offensive league and the defense, it's hard to put in a defensive system. And plus, you got this Pasqualoni who's like 150 years old, and what's he going to put out there? And how much input can
I feel like he's Matt Patricia's yes man.
Yeah.
Hey, Matt, do you want to run this? Yes.
Yes, run it. So I expect week 1, just let us get a 15-point victory plus. Let us go out there and look like a team that's ready to win. Give us a little bit of hype. Give us a little bit of hope.
You need a slump buster.
Oh, man,
you need
definitely.
a slump buster.
I need just a little bit.
This is you on the biggest dry spell of your life.
I need a taste.
And you find the fattest chick at the bar, and you're like, let me dive into that head first.
Exactly. She lets me touch outside the clothes.
No, but you're going inside the clothes.
So we just need a little taste, a little sample, something for success. Imagine what would we do next week if after that Monday night game
we're going to come in here and talk about them winning the Super Bowl, baby.
Oh, no. I'm saying what will happen if they lose? Oh, my God.
They lose?
They lose the Jets.
Oh, Jesus Christ. We're going to Allen Park and burning it to the ground.
Oh, my God.
All of it. I'll bring 2 flamethrowers. One for you, one for me, and we'll set the whole place ablaze.
We deserve to be 1-0. Please go out there and perform. National audience, opening night, please go out there in front of your fans and let people be happy. I don't want to see the season ruined after one game, because if it does, forget it. People might start talking like, we don't want Patricia here anymore.
Wait, what's your predictions for the season?
7-9. I think it's going to be much better, a much better brand second half. I think Stafford will do well, but I don't see the defense getting better with the makeshift guys from off the waiver wire. I see the defense being a weakness. I see that offenses can definitely take advantage of some things going on with the lack of pressure. And I see a lot of close games, but I just see the Lions sometimes falling short, not because of the way they play, but there's teams that are just better than them.
Yeah.
Much better talent across the league.
I've been wavering back and forth between 6-10 and 7-9. I'm going to go at 7-9.
7-9, baby. That's the number. I think that's a fair, objective way of looking at this team. It's starting, guys. Here we go. Monday Night Football. You know to come find us every single Thursday. We will break it down in our own unique way. For the Jock, Adam Strozinski, I am the Doc, John McAroon. Definitely this Sunday, 10 a.m., WDFN, iHeart app. Check out the WDFN tailgate hosted by Ryan and Adam. It will be a great show, and we're all proud of Adam here at the network. He's going to do a great job all season prepping you for what you're going to see. He'll keep it real. He'll keep it fair. And the best part about it is he's a Detroit guy, not an outsider posing as a Detroit guy. He's a Detroit guy, and he bleeds all things Detroit sports. And that's the best part about having a guy like that on the radio, is that he's on our side. Definitely, and don't forget that. WDFN, Sunday tailgate, 10 a.m. every single Sunday, Adam and Ryan. And maybe a chime in from the DOC every once in a while to give a prescription for everybody every once in a while.
That would be great. I hope you call.
Definitely.
Everybody else call too.
It
makes my job so much easier when you call.
All right, we'll be back next Thursday. Thanks everybody for listening. The free and easy way to support us, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. See everybody next time.
Go Lions.
This was locker room talk.
Second dick.
Sorry, Detroit. Didn't quite work out.
And all I can say is Detroit Sports Podcast scores.
I hear voices in my head. They counsel me. They understand. They talk to me.